Ira Scarlet Revenger is the newest in the ever-growing Armory deck product line. With Ira originating from the Welcome decks all the way back in 2018, this much more powerful Armory deck feels like a very natural progression for new players to pick up as their entry into Flesh and Blood. So with that in mind, let's take a look at this product and discuss the pros as well as some cons and see if this is really great for both the new and established players. Thanks once again to LSS for sending me a deck to review, and I sure hope you guys don't mind the critiques I have for it, because this is my honest review of the Ira Armory deck. Also, if you're wondering why I'm wearing a muscle shirt, we're currently in a heat wave and I'm attempting not to die. The Ira Armory deck costs between $40 and $60 depending on your currency, and it comes in the same sleek packaging that all the rest of the decks do, with the hero front and center and some blurbs about them on the back. Inside you'll find the deck as well as... wait, where's the how to play guide? The Gravy Bones deck, which just released like a month before this, came with a little how to play pamphlet that new players could reference while learning the game, but the Ira deck doesn't? I really can't overstate just how baffled I am about this. Ira has been the Welcome deck hero for years now, and so this deck feels like a natural first step for brand new players to get into Classic Constructed, and this is more important than ever considering that was the role Aurora was supposed to play before she decided to speedrun into Living Legend. So not having a how to play guide, especially when the last deck had it, is a huge miss. Honestly, I can only think of two reasons why this deck doesn't have one. The first is that maybe this was actually printed before the Gravy Bones deck, but LSS decided to push it back. And this would actually make some sense because honestly, the Ira deck just destroys Gravy Bones, so I could see LSS deciding to change the release order so that newer players buying this deck have a good shot into the many Gravy Bones players considering how popular he is. But the only other reason I can see not having a how to play guide is that maybe they felt like the simple one the Ira Welcome deck comes with was enough, which if that was the case, I couldn't disagree more. The little guide that comes with the Welcome deck is fantastic for the Welcome decks. It's a very simplified rule guide that works for the very simplified decks, but for something like an Armory deck, you really do need a more detailed how to play guide, like the ones that came with Gravy Bones. Whatever the reason was, I find it very disappointing that the Ira Armory deck doesn't come with a way for new players to learn the game. Sure, it's got the QR code still, and the gameplay that LSS puts out on YouTube is as superb as ever, but as I've said many times before, this is an in-person game, and having a physical guide is far better than sitting on your phone to read the rules. I had mentioned in the Gravy Bones review that LSS should make a generic how to play guide to slot into every Armory deck without having to change it, and this is exactly why I made that suggestion. I really hope that this is just a one-off and we see these guides return in the future. Because with Ira, we've taken a step back, and all you get is the deck, which includes the hero, weapon, 4 pieces of armor, and the 60 card Classic Constructed deck. For the hero and equipment, there's 4 rainbow foils and 2 non-foils. Ira and the 3 new equipment pieces for this deck are rainbow foil, but the Edge of Autumn and Snapdragon Scalers are not. This is because both of these come in foil from earlier sets, and LSS have a reprint policy that once a card is printed in foil in a set, it won't be printed as a foil with that art again. Thankfully, this doesn't extend to cards printed as promos, so even though Ira herself came as a foil promo, they were still able to print her as a foil in this deck, which is a very nice touch. There's just something so much nicer about getting a foil hero than a non-foil one. As for the rest of the deck, well, there is a lot to talk about here. This 60 card Classic Constructed deck comes with a great number of reprints as well as a whole slew of brand new cards, but none of the new cards come in rainbow foil. See, every Armory deck in the past, starting with the very first one, had 1 rainbow foil copy of each of the new cards. The first change to this was with the Max Armory deck, where for some reason Construct Bankbreaker only came in non-foil, while the other cards had 1 rainbow foil copy. But with both Gravy Bones and this Ira deck, the new cards are all non-foil, and honestly, this is a really disappointing change. I loved the fact that you got a single foil of each of the new cards, as it incentivized some trading for those who wanted to foil out their decks. New players who didn't care about the bling could trade those foils for the non-foil copies, as well as maybe a card or two to upgrade the deck with. While it's not the end of the world, it is very strange that this deck is taking multiple steps back while maintaining the same price. Obviously, what matters most is the quality and power of the deck itself, and as I'll get into, the Ira deck is genuinely the best place for new players to jump into Classic Constructed. But that means that lacking things that have been in other decks in the past is a pretty big letdown. Thankfully though, this is pretty much all made up for by the fact that this deck is incredible and the reprints are even better. The Majestic reprint of choice here is Give and Take, which, while a decent card, is actually the least impressive reprint value-wise, thanks to it only being a few dollars. However, unlike Call to the Grave or Heist, which were more expensive but printed as one-ofs in their respective decks, the Ira deck comes with 2 Give and Takes, which is very nice. But what's even better are the inclusions of both Snatch and Sink Below. I have been saying for ages that pre-constructed products should try to have reprinted staple rares and commons like these. While cards like Scar for Scar and Ravenous Rabble have both been reprinted in multiple sets for limited play, cards like Snatch and Sink Below haven't, likely due to how powerful they are. But these are staple cards for the game. They're a little hard to pick up since they're from the very first set. Plus, they each cost a couple bucks a copy, so including them here is incredible. Except that's still not even the best reprint, because the deck also comes with a playset of Red Bittering Thorns, a card that only came in the Ira Round the Table deck. And it also only came as a 2-of there, so if you wanted 3, you either had to shell out $10 to $15 a copy, or you had to spend like $100 to $150 for 2 Round the Table sets just to get your playset and an extra. Honestly, these reprints alone make the deck a great value for both new and existing players, and gives anyone wanting to play Ira a genuinely great start with the hero. So while I'm disappointed by the lack of a how to play guide and the rainbow foil copies of the new cards, I do feel like the reprints here help balance those negatives out in terms of the overall value of the product. But what matters most about the Ira Armory deck is how well it plays out of the box and how strong those new cards are. And after playing it completely unchanged at my Armory, I have to say, this deck is up there alongside Aurora as one of the best Armory decks that have ever been printed. The Ira Armory deck is incredibly well designed and packs an absolutely massive punch straight out of the box. It has the ability to play aggressively with wide combat chains, but can also be defensive and rely on 2-card plays when it needs to. The inclusion of Go Again attacks as well as Sink Below and Flick Flack make this deck feel very fluid when playing it, as it gives you the ability to adapt to different game states, whether you're on the offensive or defensive. And honestly, for a pre-con deck, this thing is damn impressive. The deck's construction ultimately revolves around Ira's personal weapon, the Edge of Autumn, with all the new cards requiring it to function. And this is great because before this deck, Ira did what all ninjas did and just ran the harmonized Kodachis. But with the Okana Scar Wraps, Robe of Autumn's Fall, Legacy of Akaru, Seek Vengeance, Vengeance Never Rests, and Enact Vengeance. By the way, can you tell that Ira is on a quest for vengeance? But she is now best built with her own weapon. This is not only an absolute flavor win, it's also quite powerful because, my goodness, these new cards are actually quite good. All of them require you to use them after attacking with the Edge of Autumn, which then unlocks their full abilities. Seek Vengeance is a 0 for 4 or 2 for the blue that also blocks 3 and gets Go Again. Vengeance Never Rests gets Go Again and can be banished and played again if it hits. Legacy of Akaru is a 3-block blue that can buff a ninja attack and lets you draw if it hits. And Enact Vengeance is a mini Command and Conquer. As for the equipment, well, the Robe of Autumn's Fall has Arcane Barrier, which is decent, and it gives you a one-time free resource when you hit with your weapon, helping you play things like Flying Kick. Iris of the Blossom gives you access to a Whirling Mist Blossom on demand, which I'm sure is good, but honestly, I just found myself blocking 2 with it every time. However, the real power in this deck comes from the Okana Scar Wraps, which are just insane. This card allows you to banish your Edge of Autumn to give an attack +1 as an attack reaction, and whenever a card with Vengeance in the name hits, you can bring your weapon back. This arm piece makes the deck genuinely powerful, as it not only helps ensure on hits, but it forces your opponents to always take it into consideration when they're choosing blockers. That said, you do need to be careful with it. See, in the second game I played at my Armory, I was up against Carlos, who was also playing the Ira deck unchanged. And as a quick aside, this was a really good matchup and felt really well balanced. Like, if you've played the Welcome decks, this is that game experience just with fully powered decks. Honestly, the only other time I have played a mirror match with the Armory decks was when Jarl came out, and those were genuinely some of the worst games I have ever played in Flesh and Blood, so I'm very glad that the Ira Armory deck mirror is actually fun. Or at least it was fun right up until I overextended and tried to use the Okana Scar Wraps in the Legacy of Ikaru to get up and over Carlos's sink below, only for him to play a second one. This meant that, because I'd used the arms but didn't hit, my Edge of Autumn stayed and banished, and the game was just a downward spiral from there. Without the weapon, I was unable to chip in damage, and all the cards that rely on it for their abilities were suddenly far worse. So, if you are picking up this deck, just try and be a bit careful with the arms, because if you lose your weapon, you're not going to have a good time. But even with that mistake, every game I played was great. This deck has everything it needs right out of the box, and while sure, there's cards you absolutely will want to upgrade it with, this is one of the few decks that genuinely feels like you don't need to start getting wins with it. For example, my first match was into Gravy Bones, and I absolutely wrecked him. Remember when I was talking about the lack of a how to play guide earlier, I mentioned that maybe this deck's release had been pushed to after Gravy Bones so that new players could beat it with this deck? Yeah, you might have thought I was over-exaggerating, but if you go through and read a lot of Ira's cards like Whirling Mist Blossom, they just say when this hits, not when this hits a hero, meaning that these on hits include allies. So if an opponent plays, say, an Anka, you can hit it with the Edge of Autumn, then a Whirling Mist Blossom, killing the Anka, and then you get to draw those two cards. And remember, while the headpiece is usually a 2-block, in this matchup, you can actually use it to fetch a Whirling Mist Blossom to either clear a board or just kill the one ally and then go face at the opponent. This Ira deck can not only go wide and apply a lot of pressure, which is already good against Gravy Bones, but you also get to just farm the allies for free, making this a very Ira favored matchup. And this is something I'm actually a little bit torn on, honestly. Gravy Bones is proven to be a very strong and popular hero, and so a new player starting with Ira will have an actual shot at getting some wins against more experienced players, which is a positive. But the downside to this skewed matchup is that there's also other newer players who would have just picked up a Gravy Bones Armory deck and maybe even put a couple $100s into upgrading it. And now they're going to be dealing with a deck that can, on demand, go and grab a Whirling Mist Blossom and get free value off those allies. And so those still pretty new players who just got in with Gravy are now going to be having a rough time if a bunch of people start playing Ira instead. Again, there are positives and negatives to Ira countering Gravy, and whether you think this is a good or bad thing will depend on which of the heroes you're playing. I had played 5 games in total with the Ira deck unchanged, and honestly, I am very impressed with how strong and consistent it is. There are more than enough blues that you're almost never hurting for resources, and it's packed with really solid red attacks and staples that you will actually run in a tuned list. The new arms are very strong, and the headpiece and chest are very serviceable. You're definitely fine to run the equipment the deck comes with and focus on upgrading the deck itself first. For example, I'd recommend replacing the copy of Energy Potion in the deck with literally anything. I mean, I get it, you can set this up at the end of a chain and save resources for a flying kick later, but like, you're most definitely gonna find better cards than Energy Potion, let's be real. As for what to upgrade this deck with, well, I have included this in some past reviews, but in order to keep these more focused, I'm not gonna continue to include this part myself. However, the guys on Cup of TCG have done a great video on upgrading this Ira deck with 3 different price tiers, so I'll link their video below if you want to go watch that and check out their lists. And with all that said, there's just one more question to answer. The Ira Armory deck feels like it's in a bit of an odd situation. On one hand, the lack of a how to play guide feels like a huge step back from the Gravy Bones deck, and the lack of foil cards is honestly a huge bummer. But in terms of the reprinted staples, the new equipment, all the new Vengeance cards, and just the deck's overall power, this is genuinely one of the best Armory decks that you can buy. I said it before, but this is up there alongside Aurora as being the best way for a new player to jump into Classic Constructed, because the deck isn't just strong, it's also not overly complicated to play. And unlike Aurora, Ira is a long way from hitting Living Legend. And even if you're an established player, this could be a great side deck to pick up if you just want something fun to play here and there. A little while back, I did a challenge where I built a $50 Ira deck and tried to win my Armory with it, and out of all of the budget decks that I've done, this is the only one that I have actually kept playing, although I did upgrade it a bit more from there. Ira might have the most simple hero ability, but it's a good one, and she is a ton of fun to play. If you're like me and you remember her from way back in the day in Blitz, then you will be pleased at how much fun she still is to play in Classic Constructed. So, is the Ira Armory deck worth it? Absolutely. Yeah, I'd prefer a how to play guide and one foil for the new cards, and I've talked in the past about a full set of Arcane Barrier or a resource coin or some other little include, but I can't deny just how good this Armory deck is. I am very impressed with how it plays and how strong it is, and I am personally very much looking forward to upgrading this myself and playing it alongside my Gravy Bones and Florian decks. I would recommend anyone even remotely interested in this hero to pick the deck up. It's a fantastic starting point for any new player, it's great fun even for established players, and at worst, if you really don't want to keep playing it, you can at least harvest it for the Sink Belows and Snatches for another deck you want to build. Whatever your situation, this is a great pickup even with the flaws. Anyways, that will be all for today. I hope you found this video helpful, and thanks again to LSS for sending me the deck to review. I honestly appreciate that even though I could be very critical, you guys still give me the opportunity to review these and give some feedback. But with all that said, thank you for watching, and thank you very, very much to all of the patrons. You guys are the Chadliest of all, and I can't thank you enough. Huge shoutouts to the Giga Chads Geeks first, Elixir, Vinny, John, Ty, Chemical, Bryant, Dark Memoria, and Big Hungry. Then we've got the Alpha Chads, Thomas, Zajima, and Approximo, and then there's the Super Chads, Cece, Ben, Yogbadoodles21, Kevin, and Wolf Shadowmancer. Thanks again as always, and stay Chadly, my friends.